Hello and welcome back to the worst Warmachine channel on the internet. I'm Dorian, and it's time for another Warmachine Weekly. Now this week, the patrons went and voted on one of the topics actually I suggested and want to talk about, which is Kommandant Politics. Now, very quickly, for those who don't know what Kommandant is the 4-player version of the game, and things really change when you have multiple opponents. And the real thing that I think people that haven't played it don't realize is how significant those politics are. So what we're going to do in this video is kind of better explain that and why that's going on, and then kind of talk about some tips to how you deal with deals on the actual table there when you're playing a game of Kommandant. So first, why does this even happen? You know, is this something that has to be forced into a game, or is it something that naturally happens in it? And what I feel is that politics in a multiplayer game naturally occurs. This is not something you need to force. It's just naturally going to happen, and you might actually have to like force it the other way to try and not make any deals, because I think for most people they're going to want to. Now, why am I saying that? The reason is that when you're playing as one player versus one other player, or maybe one team versus one other team, it really comes down to what is the most efficient play that I can be doing right now. I'm trying to eliminate your pieces as fast as I can so that they cannot eliminate my pieces. I'm trying to kill your caster so I can win the game. I'm trying to score that scenario so I can win the game. And that's my only concern, right? Maybe I'm doing different plays because this one, oh, I don't have the time for that on the clock or something like that, or this is a risky play and it's more of a risk-based analysis, but it's always going to be what is the most effective thing I can do to win this game. Now, here's the problem of doing that in a game where you have more than one opponent. And what that really is the idea of which of these multiple players is going to be seen as the threat. It's really not so much an idea of what is the optimum play I can be doing at this time, because for starters, if I go ahead and do such things, the game doesn't end like it does in a regular game. Sure, if I win on scenario, that's going to end it. That's how Kommandant works. First one to get 3 points just wins the game. So, okay, if I can do that, I can win, but typically, you can't just do that all in one go. I have to slowly try and do these things. And so what I'm trying to get across is that if you go haha and go and kill off one caster, you don't just win the game. You go and you extend yourself to do these things. And whereas in a normal game, it's okay that you've extended yourself and put yourself in danger because the game's over. That's it. Or maybe I went in and killed things and now there's not really anything else to reply because I took out what the threat was. Well, if you can do that in a game of Kommandant, you are the most brilliant and effective general I've ever known, because it really is at that point 25 points versus 75 points. There should be no way that just through like sheer force you are able to take your little army and beat 3 other armies. That just isn't really possible. And so what that really means is you have to be a little bit more meaningful about what plays you're doing and what is the best thing I can do where my reach isn't going to harm me that badly. Now, this is where that politics comes in and determining the threat. And I think before we talk about the politics of like, hey, let's make a deal because I don't want you to hurt me, let's talk about the deals and the politics that you might be making because we need to be hurting this person. Now, like I said, it is very, very rare that somebody is able to go bing, 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 get 3 points and just just like one go right away. They had to kind of slowly build towards it. And because of this, it becomes very apparent who the threat is, whether they have a very powerful list, maybe they're in a very powerful position, like they already have 2 control points, and look, if they get one more, they win the game. And it's an automatic thing then at that point to say, look, I could attack you, but this person's about to win. So I'm going to need to go and attack this person and not you, because even though I could do an effective peace trait here. We're like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to take out your battle group and it's going to be awesome. Well, if I do that, this person still wins. So for me not to lose the game, I have to attack the threat rather than this person over here. And right there, because I'm assuming you're not the only person with a brain at the table, they realize this as well. And they also realize this person is the threat, so we have to work together so that we can stop them from winning so that we don't lose. That whole camaraderie comes from that point there where you have to work together to actually give your chance, like yourself, a chance to win later. That is your only ability to win, is to work with others to beat the person that's actually in the lead. Now, I think that's the first level of politics, is realizing who that threat is and then saying we're going to have to go and attack them. Now, I think there's two little offshoots that really come from this first idea. And one is the idea of identifying the threat. And second is how to make those deals. So let's talk about that first one there, because that's probably a little bit more interesting. And then we'll get to the more technical side about making deals. Now, obviously, like I said, if somebody becomes the threat, they are going to be probably in a 3 versus 1 scenario. When they're at that, the edge of winning, everybody else is going to see that and then try and stop them. Or, as I said, be in a very strong position. Maybe they're not at the edge of winning, but they can see that they're in such a strong position that, look, we have to work together, otherwise we're in a lot of trouble. Now, this comes right down to the very beginning of what you might put in your own force. You might not want to put in the most powerful things you can think of because you realize the others are going to see you as a threat. And then, unless, again, you're the best player there and you can beat 3 other players, you're probably going to lose that. So it's going to be then, from the politics side of things, from the way that you build your force and the way that you're actually playing on the board, trying to seem yourself not the threat so that somebody else will. Now, as part of this, you probably want to be doing regular threat assessment anyway. As you're playing any game, you want to be looking out and trying to identify what the threat is. Now, while you're doing that, there's no problem suggesting to others what that threat is. For starters, you might just be right. Like, look, people, this person is about to win the game. If we don't do X, they're going to win the game. We have to work together. Or look at this, the thing that they have here. This is an assassination machine. And if we don't all protect ourselves, they're just going to kill our casters and just win that way. So correctly identifying the threat to others can set yourself up for those alliances to actually be playing against them, and more so can kind of also guard them or your teammates from actually losing points to this player. Again, like in that example there, if they've set up their list for this sort of assassination, if you didn't tell your opponents, you might feel it's in your benefit because you lost your caster, until you realize that this player got the points for doing that. And even though you're ahead because you have a caster and one of your opponents doesn't, the fact that another one of your opponents is now up in points in this race to get 3 to win is really not in your favor. So it is then ideal for you to be pointing out threats to your opponents so that you can be forming alliances and not let your allies crumble before you can even do that. The other part of this is the misdirection. The idea that you want people looking other places so that they're not looking at you. Again, a big goal of what you want to be doing in this situation is holding back. You kind of want to be in that second place position. Like, you don't want to aim to be last, but you kind of want to be in that second place position, like in Mario Kart, and be like, okay, now that they've been hit with a blue turtle shell, now it's my turn to go type thing. And that's the position you want to be. And if that's through misdirection and saying, wow, look over here, like that Ron, it's going to be doing some crazy stuff. That can be truthful. In fact, if it has to be, if you're just lying, they're going to be like, what are you talking about? That's not a threat at all. And they're just not going to trust you. But, maybe by focusing there, you might be an equal threat to them or even more of a threat. But if you've built it in a dark horse kind of like subtle way and theirs is very obvious, you can get the focus of the table on that player and away from your own things. So that little slyness is something you definitely want to be thinking about. Now, another very important part of this politics then is going to be making those deals. It's one thing to say to the other players, like, look, this person's about to win, let's go do it. But the problem with that is that let's assume that this is like ticking around as a clock, as like the different players and the allied force is attacking them. At some point, unless you're going to lose, you're going to go and knock them down enough that they are no longer the top threat. And then what happens at that point? The alliance is obviously probably going to stop because, look, now at this point, we have stopped the threat. Now maybe I might be the threat and they're going to be attacking me instead. So this is where I might want to be coming up with ideas of deals. And some of the classic deals that you'll be seeing in games like Kommandant is the idea like, look, I won't attack you this turn, and you don't attack me this turn. Maybe the idea is that we're all going to be working together to take out this threat, but just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, we are not going to break this for one turn cycle. We're, at least me and this person, or maybe I can make that multiple deals, we're just not going to do anything for this turn to hurt each other. And this is where the wording of this deal can be very, very important. Some of the deals might be very straightforward in saying, look, I'm going to make no attacks against you, and you don't make any attacks against me. And so, okay, maybe we don't make any attacks, then that's all fine. However, define an attack. Is an attack, I'm going to swing a sword at you and kill something? Are we talking more so damage? What if I go and I put a spell on you to debuff you? I had to make a magic attack roll, but that's not really attack, right? That's a spell. So the way that you word these things can be crafted in a way so that you can get some benefit from them. You can be having something there that's, here's another one that I had in a recent game. All the pieces that I have that are going to be doing damage to try and take out this caster. They're trying to win. Okay, so as long as we're both on the same page, you'll do that and I'll do that. However, very importantly in that matchup, there was one heavy I had that in no way could go and do anything to that caster. So, because they couldn't, I used that to go and take out one of their heavies. Now, I think this is where it's really important to talk about the difference between wording a deal to get benefits from it and completely just betraying somebody and just lying in a deal. If you go in and you make deals with other players and you don't hold up your side of the bargain, you might go and give yourself an advantage in that one game. However, you have to think about that these are people that you play with week after week, year after year. And if you establish that you're a person that will be not holding their side of deals, you might be strengthening your position in this one game at the cost of weakening your position in every game after that. So even though you are able to make a deal and break it, because they're not going to go to like Warmachine jail, it's not the way that it works, I would highly, highly suggest you never do that. Whatever deal you make, you stick to. However, do realize that the wording of that deal can be very specific and something that you can watch for. And if your opponent ever thinks that you did break a deal, do make sure that you explain like, well, wait a second, we said we weren't going to damage each other, and I went and I put this debuff on you, or I used TK to move you closer over to there so that they could attack you type ideal. So that's something that you really want to stress to make sure you can continue these politics going forward. Now, another way that you might be trying to make these deals is not so much in a 3 versus 1 scenario, but just something where you don't want to be fighting a battle on 2 fronts. When you're playing Kommandant, you are pretty much going to be fighting a person to your left, a person to your right, and even though there's a person across from you, you typically don't interact with them until later in the game, and in either way that you want to say it, the player to your left and to your right, or you're going to be interacting with a lot more than the person across the way. And so what that really means is that if I can eliminate one of those threats, I can then focus everything the other way. Now, of course, one way I can do that is by crushing them with sheer force, but usually I have then pushed my things so far that I can't defend myself from the other side, or now they're not a threat, but that other person now might be coming against me as well. So that's something to be thinking about with that sheer force idea of politics. Now, when you're trying to make these deals, you might be able to simply just say, look, I don't want to be fighting on two fronts. How about you don't attack me, and then I can go after this person over here. And to be perfectly clear with this, you pretty much always want to be making that deal with the person on the right. And the reason why that is because the way that the turn order goes around clockwise, you want to make that deal over here because you're going to be able to see what they do before you take your action, right? If you were to make the deal with the person on the left, the person on the right will be like, well, screw you then, attack, attack, attack. This way, you can make a deal and say like, okay, I don't want to be fighting on two fronts. How about you don't attack me this turn, I don't attack you this turn, and then I can focus my attacks this way. And if they agree, you can make sure that they held their part of the bargain and then be like, all right, awesome, let's go. Keeping in mind that the term of the deal could mean that next turn they could attack you. So maybe you have to make further deals. Maybe you have to be making deals to go more than one turn. These are all things that'll be the fun of what Kommandant really is. Now, as part of trying to sell this deal, again, this might come into the part where you're going to be trying to point fingers at where the threat is. And you can be saying things like, look over there. You are seeing a lot of attack from the player over there. If you would like to deal with that threat, we can have an agreement where I don't attack you and you don't attack me for a turn. Okay, that sounds great. Like this player over here is attacking me, so great, let's make that deal and I can go now attack them. You can be doing things like that to encourage them to be taking these sorts of deals. Now, that's, I think, some of the major deals you're going to be making, but it gets further from this. There's other sneaky things you can do, which I would be putting in the classification of trading points. So what I really mean by that is saying things like, look, I can make it so that you score an extra points if you let me score an extra point. And sometimes that can mean like, look, you just don't defend your flag and I'll run up and I'll take your flag and then I won't defend mine and you can run and score my flag, right? I don't lose anything from losing my own flag. It really just means, actually for my part, that the person on the other side isn't going to be attacking me as much because there's not a flag to be captured. Sure, my opponent is gaining from this deal because they're getting one of their 3 points, but so am I. And so really, from brute force, I can be scoring points and get assassinations, but this is a point that I can gain just from politics. This could also come from something in like the center zone as well, right? You can say like, look, I can see there that you're about to crush the center zone and score a point. How about this? I know you could be attacking me so that I don't contest you, but how about if instead of doing this, you just really dedicate to try and hold that, and then you just, in doing so, allow me to get to your flag. I'll be hands off. I'm not going to attack you this turn, but that means I'm not going to contest you in the center either. So you can do your thing and score that in the center, and then on my turn, you're going to score it again, so you're going to get another point, and then I'm just going to get 1 from going over there and getting the flag. The way that you're painting that deal, they're scoring 2 points and you're scoring 1, so it's very much in their benefit. However, here's the thing. They were going to score 1 of those points anyway, so again, it's really a 1 point to 1 point deal. and you are now making a threat, which is kind of like the next set of this politics. The idea that if you know the way that this game is played is that people are going to assess the threat and then attack the threat, if you make someone the threat, you are guaranteeing an alliance to go and fight them. So in this case here, where you're putting another player at 2 points, you're actually putting them in a worse spot. If they were to, instead of making this deal, go in, break into the center, get that 1 point, okay, maybe they're not really the threat and you're still going to be fighting everyone at the same time. However, based on this deal that you've made, they've broken in, they've gotten 2 points, they are definitely the threat, you're going to go and take that flag, and now what is the person to your left going to have to do? They have to go into that zone and punish them and lock it down. Otherwise, they're going to win the game. Now, in doing this, the other players might realize, like, well, wait a second, Malorian, we're only in this position because you made this deal. And that might mean that they come after you after that person, but that may be too late, right? While the Alliance is working on smashing on that person and making sure they don't get the 3rd point, maybe you can go and sneak up and jump up and get your 3rd point. It's a gambit, it's a gamble, it's something you can try. Again, the politics of this can get very intricate and very, very fun. So there you have it. That's really the idea of the main areas of these politics. You know, there's other ways you can be doing these things, like, hey, I'll TK this thing over that way and you put that spell onto me to buff me, or however you want to be wording that deal. The biggest thing I want you to understand is the different types of politics there are out there, why it's important, and more so, why you have to stick with these politics and not just lie and break deals, because unless that's the only Kommandant game you're ever going to play, these politics follow you to game to game to game, and people will remember, like, wait a second, you were sneaky and stabbed me in the back last time, I'm going to get you this game. And so you just made yourself, you know, the target for no real huge benefit, right? So something to really keep in mind. So that's why I love it. That's why I love doing these Kommandant games and politics. But I want to do another shout out here to my patrons who voted and wanted this topic. So going out there to my content overlords, Darrell and Dorian, to all my manipulators, I got Adrian, Andrew, Brian, Jordan, Kieran, Ryan, Samuel, and Sloth Monarchy, and Stephen Williams. There's lots of them. And let's also shout out the supporters as well. We got David Dissett, we got Nicholas, and we got Sean. We also got K-Error 623 as well. You guys are fantastic. Thank you for your support. I love doing these things, and then your support allows me to try and improve the way that I'm doing this. So thank you so much. And also to all my regular viewers as well. Thank you for watching this, and hopefully you're getting, you know, some real benefit from this. I hope this is starting a conversation. If you have other ideas of, you know, politics and how it should work, or maybe just hate politics, whatever it is, put it down in the comments. Let's have this conversation going forward. And otherwise, we'll catch you later. Bye.